the subject matter is so technical and so impactful.
It's happened so quick. That shouldn't put people off.
Most companies that have got data quality issues, they do that forever. I think it is literally like painting the fourth bridge.
Projects that are going to take years, don't we, right, to solve that problem. We can't do that.
One of the cool things about this conversation. So Paul, 81% of leaders that we surveyed think that AI is going to fundamentally transform the way they get value from the business. What do you make of that?
I reckon that is exactly what's going to happen. I think that's right. I think, AI, GenAI, that's been the focus, what everyone's been raving about. LinkedIn's been alight with it, right? I think it is going to fundamentally change the way people think about productivity. It's going to change the way people think about how they approach doing low-value tasks. And I think it should unlock people's time and allow them to spend a lot more time on things that are really valuable for an organisation, and really work on things around innovation and stuff, and really be free of that burden of doing low-value repetitive tasks. And I think the organisations that really get that right are going to really, really improve their productivity.
We talk to lots of leaders pretty much every day. And it's interesting, isn't it, that we can't really get 2 minutes into any conversation anymore without talking about AI. And people seem to go from kind of one extreme to the other. On one hand, it's going to take away everyone's jobs and transform the whole business model, all the way through to some people are relatively skeptical and they kind of teeter around the edges with what AI can do. I think from Aiimi's perspective, whilst there are lots of considerations and concerns, we're really pro AI, and we are really on that. We share that view, right? That the value is massive out there. It's just a matter of the types of things that we should do first, and maybe some of the things that we should steer away from.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things, and I think there's some points later where we're getting to talking around governance, data quality, but they are really big things that need to be thought about. And I think it's right to have some skepticism. I think it would be unhealthy and wrong just to go at it believing on all of the hype that you see. It's actually quite healthy to have that and challenge it. Yeah, I do think you need to do that. But yeah, I think the value is there. I just think organisations have got to set themselves up to exploit that. And there's some things you're going to have to do, the hard yards in some areas, to get yourself into a position where you can safely and responsibly exploit it.
Now, we often talk about the good old days with where the cool tech used to come from, and we were thinking the last bit of tech that we got from work that everybody wanted at home was our Blackberries, which is a good few years ago. I think at the minute the journey with AI is similar in a way. A lot of us are playing around with ChatGPT at home, doing our kids' homework, experimenting with it, starting to make that leap into how it can be used in business. In fact, a lot of people are actually using business data with those tools, right?
Yeah, for sure. It brings its own challenges, of course.
But I think in terms of the opportunity, the leap, I think there's a real possibility that in the not too distant future we can create some tech at work with AI that will then be far better than we're used to using at home. Yeah,
I think that is probably true. But what is fascinating is the whole GenAI thing has been a very bottom up. People have used it at home to do their kids' homework or to write a CV or whatever, and they've brought that thing to work. Usually we push technology down into organisations through initiatives. We get new systems, we get new things that we deploy, but it's almost like the opposite has happened, which has made it really hard, I think, for organisations to put, or is making it hard to put governance and controls around it, because it's a bit of you brought it to work. It's the opposite's happened. You brought it to work.
We're going to get into kind of who owns AI and who drives it in a moment, but I think in that survey that we've done, we've addressed quite a broad set of leaders. And I think unanimously everyone is saying that they see it as positive. But there is a lot of tension in these management teams at the moment, right? Because everybody is aware of what it can do. They're starting to experiment with it. There's this inertia that's building that we should be doing something. And in a lot of cases, companies are scared to really embrace it and really get on with it whilst they figure out what to do with it. What do you see as some of the considerations and concerns that they've got?
Well, I think the concerns, so I talk a lot about the protectors of the realm, people in IT security, people in legal, people that are charged with looking after your business and protecting you from harm. And they're quite rightly concerned around some of the privacy, data quality issues that come along with it. And they're becoming, there's a risk that those people are perceived as blockers. Actually, they're just trying to protect you. So really, it's incumbent on those organisations to do their homework, to be able to properly understand how these models work. And some of this is a skills gap, but to understand how they work, to start to unblock that. But this also goes hand in hand with some kind of strategy around data quality and making sure all this information is the right information that you should be feeding models, especially if you're going to start to divest a bit of decision making to it. So quite a number of points there, I guess, together, but really they all come down to your data quality and governance, some skills, and then people in your organization feeling comfortable with the adoption of the technology.
But these leaders, especially CIOs, CDOs, heads of data, digital, and now AI, they're in a tricky position, aren't they? Yeah. Because they've got a relatively, when I say well-informed, they understand they read the news. They go on LinkedIn. It looks like all these companies all over the place, including their competition, are miles ahead.
Yeah.
And yet, in reality, not a lot of people are really operationalizing this.
No.
But they're building up a lot of pressure. And then on the other side of the fence, they've got the masses of workers in the field are starting to deploy AI companions, apps on their phone, and they're starting to take advantage of that. How do we kind of operationalize AI and somehow cope with, the shadow AI?
It's happening. A huge challenge, right? Because cloud taught us this. You are going to have systems, departmental systems that are really good at certain things. And you're right, they're going to have their own co-pilot. So I think the only way you're going to solve that is if you do put in some kind of technology that can bridge all of those different information silos that, you start to get, that you can then, use, AI and pull all of that information into kind of a central capability so you can bring that data together. I think you're going to have to do something like that in order to operationalize it. Otherwise, you're just going to, we already have a problem with data silos. We're never going to have a problem with data silos and AI creating tons more content in those silos. And that's just not a sustainable position to take, I don't think.
I think if that problem that I set up wasn't big enough, this technology is moving at such a pace.
Such a pace, yeah.
I've got 3.5, 4 turbo.
4.0 as of like this morning or something.
And then there's new models coming out from foundational suppliers all the time. It's a really difficult challenge, and I think the approach to operationalizing it and actually drawing on some of that value that all these leaders can see is going to take a different approach this time, a more experimental approach. And some of the things that I know that you've been talking about to some of the CIOs has been about creating a labs environment, a much more experimental thing.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and I think organizations need to be learning about the way this technology works. Of course, you're going to lean on suppliers, you're going to need organizations to help you understand, but to build some of your own skills in that space, I think is really important as well. So you can protect yourselves and you can make smart decisions on how you deploy. But it's going to be a huge challenge to operationalize it. But you can't sit and wait for ages and build some, what we'd normally do is build a big strategy, wouldn't we? And we'd spend years defining a strategy. You can't do that. So it's that balance between putting some strategic thinking in place, that protects you, but then you're going to need to embrace it quite quickly and work out that balance. It's not going to be trivial to do.
I think for me, what I hear a lot is organizations talking about digital literacy, improving skills across the board, management teams, and the whole business generally. But one of the things that I often hear you talk about is being able to build a set of core skills in a business that really understand the innards of how large language models work. Some of the things that they can and can't do, and some of the considerations, really, really important things that they need to understand. And it's taking that experiment and that learning and that knowledge and somehow converting that into language that can be consumed by the rest of the company. That seems to be a massive thing.
It's so important. It is so important, because if you can't go along to the people who look after legal or IT security and articulate the way this stuff works in a way that they understand, they're never going to underwrite the risk, are they? And then you're just going to get stuck. And that's just going to create, and I've seen this in a number of places, it just feels like frustration, doesn't it? Everyone's getting frustrated. You've got techies, you've got business leaders, you've got the protectors of the realm, and everyone's kind of getting frustrated. But part of it is because those people that need to make those decisions and underwrite it can't. So I think having that time to explore and learn, and then getting the right people that can then articulate it, absolutely the right thing to do.
But I wonder if this is a relatively unique challenge to this that we're facing. And when I think about some of the big waves of technology that have come before, I think there's always been a relatively easy way of translating that into business. And this time, the subject matter is so technical and so impactful.
It's happened so quick.
And it's happened so quick.
It's happened so quick. Think about us last year. All of a sudden, this thing crashed through the window. Think about the amount of learning we've done. And we're really privileged here at Aiimi because we've got the time and the people that can immerse themselves in this stuff, right? So it's fantastic. But, a lot of organisations, they don't. And it has happened so fast. If you want to know about relational databases, all books on that coming out of our earrings, haven't we? We've got loads of information. People did it at university. Who did GenAI at university? Like, who did that, right? Only recently. So there isn't that depth of skill and understanding. So it is a real challenge. It's not to be underestimated.
So the two groups of people that seem to be owning AI in businesses are departmental leaders. You're thinking about driving operational value in their business. And then you've got a CDO that tends to be thinking more about enterprise data. What do you think are some of the considerations that we should think of in driving departmental AI or enterprise AI?
Well, I think it comes back to what we were talking about a little while ago, in part. But you're not going to stop this departmental thing. We learnt this with cloud. We're not going to stop that. But in some way, we need to kind of control it and create the right incentives to kind of control it. And then a CDO in that position, or whether it's a CIO trying to own the overall strategic picture, it's going to be a real challenge. And I think it's really, Steve, where are you at with this?
I think when I think about,
I don't have the answer.
As Aiimi as a company, we're going to help our customers drive value out of their data. It can often be at a enterprise level, a CIO, CDO, but more often than not, it's a head of department that's got a particular business problem that's convinced an element of data and digital, a new experience with different data can unlock something for them. So I think the big thing here is both are completely valid. And whilst there might seem to be a tension, I don't think there is. I personally think that if you think about departmental solutions, it could be ServiceNow and a customer service center. It could be SAP for asset management or finances, Workday for human resources. Lots of people in different departments have got a corporate system that's been evolved and perfectly tuned for how they work. It's really good at capturing and handling and serving the data that they need to do their jobs. And it's only right, I think that those organizations, those companies are creating co-pilots or companions that make people who work in that environment more productive. I think that's 100% right. The considerations are that we're going to have, these big enterprises can have 300 to 500 corporate systems. So that means over time, we're going to have 300 to 500 AI companions, co-pilots floating around. And what we've got to be conscious of is those systems are as good as the information that's contained with it. They're as good as, and they're as limited by that as well. I think there's lots of opportunity. We see in lots of data initiatives, it's when you join data together,
that's when you unlock the value.
Then you unlock value. You can overcome compliance issues, failures. And so if we then kind of consider the CIO or a CDO's perspective, their vision is really to create joined up, consistent, mastered data. They're looking at those opportunities to drive productivity.
Yeah.
So I think it's only right that they are looking through that lens of how do we put AI there so we can have AI answer questions and bring us insights irrespective of the systems that they're using.
Yeah.
And I think where I'm at, which is we're right in the I think the depths of this debate at the moment. But I personally think they belong in both places.
Yeah, they
do. I think there's a place for productivity co-pilots in corporate systems, but I think it's really important that we think about AI at the enterprise and how they can answer probably more complex questions looking at joined up information.
If departments have that joined up information, they in themselves are going to perform better. So it's a win for everybody. It's not just upwards, it's downwards as well. So maybe it's that CDO role to push that messaging down and that value down into the departments, and not just because it's quite easy, isn't it? But at a C level, you just think at that C level, don't you? But maybe it's actually a genuine opportunity for people to really make people see the value by actually having that and thinking outside of their department almost.
Yeah.
I
think from our perspective, we are always thinking about an enterprise information environment that joins up data as well as content. We think about describing information from different systems in a consistent way that allows us to create a joined up enterprise information set. And therefore, if organizations can work to building that data asset, the beauty of that is that a departmental co-pilot can do its great thing with that data, but it can also extend its capability by reaching into that enterprise data store and start connecting to other bits. So it's not even necessarily one or the other. The most important thing is that we consider the entire data picture and make sure people join that up and connect it together.
Yeah, 100%.
So 57% of the respondents from the survey said to us that they thought that their data wasn't of the right quality to train and tune and use AI in their businesses. What do you think of that statistic, and what do you think the impact of that is?
Guess to be candid, I reckon that number's probably higher, right?
Yeah.
That's higher, right? If you're asked about your own data, you might, fake that a little bit maybe, who knows? But there is no doubt, like if you're going to fine tune models, or not even fine tuning, if you're going to use your data, more generally speaking, with language, with AI, you've got to trust it. And that means you've got to trust the data quality. So there is work to do in that space. And that's so important if you're going to divest some of your decision making.
I think
it's crucial.
One of the I guess, hidden in the detail of what is data, when we think about it, it's often thought about as curated data sets that have been carefully knit together, or as you like to say, have been carefully panel beaten into a data product that's ideal to serve the business in some way. Quite often those data sets are relatively high quality. When we get into some of the raw data that comes in, I think that's more questionable.
Yep.
But more and more, we're looking at unstructured data, which is probably 90% of the information that's out there, and often that's the Wild West, right?
Yeah.
And data quality, especially that type of information, is often the source of a lot of GenAI.
Well, it is, and that's where GenAI excel with unstructured data. So that is what you're giving a lot of generative AI. You're giving it unstructured information. So, being able to classify that information and start to put trust in it, and then provide it and users with an experience where they can lasso a set of information and they've got confidence in that. That's actually absolutely crucial. And then the explainability. So, where did that information come from? Why have you used it? What's the answer that you've got?
Yeah.
How are you going to audit and track all of those things? They're hugely important. But here's the thing, right? Data quality, when we talk about data quality, we often think of projects that are going to take years, don't we? Right? To solve that problem. We can't do that, can we? I don't think, we can't go on those year-long projects to solve this. We need to find something in the middle that can help us.
I don't think we can either. We can't send out 30 people for the next 18 months doing some kind of data cleansing initiative. That is all gone.
Yeah.
We need a different way, right?
Yeah.
One thing before we get into how AI can help with some of the data quality challenges, just want to go back to that stat. 57% think the data isn't good enough. One of the things that we found is if we really want to exploit GenAI in an enterprise, that means that we're typically going to use it in an open book way. We're going to need to find some information to give to a large language model and ask it to give an answer, do some work for us. What are some of the challenges in terms of data quality if we're going to go and find the right information to give it that model?
So I guess really, it's an information retrieval problem at the heart. If you're going to go and lasso some information to give it to a model as context, you've got to be confident that the results coming back are good. So things like classification are going to help you shrink that world down and remove noise, bad stuff you don't want. Because that's really what at the heart of it is making that set of search results, your world smaller at that point in time, right? So, it is information retrieval, classification, other things like name density recognition that can help reduce that world.
But the key thing here, and this is the thing that's often, I think, overlooked, is if you want to be good at GenAI, you've got to be good at being able to find
100%.
information. And if you want to find it, your search has got to be super relevant, so you're bringing back just a few things, and that is not easy, right?
That's hard. That's a hard problem. It's easy when you've got a smaller system that only worries about a couple of data sets, departmental systems. But when you put it all together in one big data mesh, you've got all that information, then that becomes much harder to do. So understanding who it is that's doing the search, what they're really interested in at that point in time, the classification of them as a person, classification of the data that they're after, those things become so important because you can then truly shrink the world down. And then you can get at what you need.
And I guess one of the things that we find in that search relevancy world is that people describe data. They label data in different ways. They describe it in different terms. We see data quality issues where employees, customers, assets, sites, projects are given inconsistent names. And therefore, that starts to make search relevance difficult, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Synonyms, all those sorts of problems, right? People describe things in different ways and people search for things in different ways. So then you need to think about, search algorithms that can handle vocabulary mismatch and all those types of challenges. It is a hard problem.
And in a way, one of the cool things about this conversation and this realization is that it's really putting a tangible value. It's highlighting where data quality issues are going to really make it difficult for you to have relevant information and find what you need.
Yes.
Which then becomes a blocker to GenAI.
Yes.
Which then blocks the 81% of people who think they can use it to start getting value from it.
100%. Yeah. It's never been more important to be able to find the information you need, right, accurately and have confidence. Never.
I mean, we've been doing this for many years, and we've come on a journey of analytics and really trying to drive predictive analytics and unlock insights and push value to people. And in that journey that we've been on, data quality and data governance has always been a big thing, but it's been tricky actually explaining and translating that into value. I think one of the things that GenAI has done better than anything I've seen before it has surfaced the data quality and data governance as a huge thing. Just like flipping to the CIO and CDOs, they're trying to build a map of all of the corporate systems, all of the processes. They're trying to identify master data and reference data records, make sure everyone calls everything the same things, join all of that and create a massive map so that, that can guide the business. But we're seeing some challenges with that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what's interesting, as I'll start by saying, is I'm not sure, we've had a lot of technology available for years that help map our data estate. And, I'm sure there's been organisations that have been successful doing that, but I've spoken to a lot that have never quite cracked that problem, right? They're still trying to map their data estate. So, you have the potential in a technology that could help accelerate that. And importantly, do things, especially in the data quality space, do some things that humans would never have done, at scale. So I wouldn't say that GenAI solves the problem, but it's certainly a tool that can be used to accelerate your governance, compliance, and quality problems to then give you more confidence in the data that you're using. I definitely think that,
I think one thing that we all see is that AI specifically is very good at identifying patterns. And if we can label that as, a dog sitting on the grass or eating a bone, it's then very good at going and finding out millions of pictures that are same as that, labeling them. The same kind of technology is available to us at work right through things like data and document classification, identifying things like contracts and invoices and proposals, but then being able to go into those documents and data sets and start extracting out some of the key labels that are really pertinent to that. If we do that consistently across all of our data estate, it really does start to accelerate some of the things that we've been trying to do through policies and manual processes for years. There's a real opportunity to turn AI both ways, right? It can help us with GenAI and start to accelerate value, but it can also, we can point at the data that we've got and it can really help us solve some of those data quality issues.
I mean, I talk a lot about, there's obviously the use of co-pilots, right? A very visual thing in the front end of an application, you're using co-pilots. But I talk equally about using GenAI in the background to process data. And whether that be unlocking insight or whether that be in help fix information, there's absolutely a role there. And it can do it at scale, en masse. And as I say, humans would never do that. Never going to do it. We've not done it yet. We're not going to do it with the tools that we've got. So there is an opportunity there.
I think one of the things that we're starting to discover or realise is that a lot of the structured data world has been defined by clever people who think that's what the business needs. That's the data the business needs to run its operation. But as the business evolves and thinks, it wants to ask different questions that we didn't think about when we structured that information. And what we're seeing is that a lot of that is actually held in unstructured data. And so there's a new opportunity as that structured data world evolves and we want to increase levels of attribution or do more clever things with it. We can actually go to that content world and start helping us recreate some of that and fix
And
some,
we fix it,
some of the
absolutely.
quality issues.
Absolutely. We're talking to customers about that now, about how our customers look in things like O&M manuals to find missing attribution in their SAP world. They know it's there. They know it's in PDF files, but a human's never going to do that at scale. So that is some real opportunities in front of us to solve that.
From the survey we did, those leaders that have already invested in data classification think that they're 6 times more likely to be ready to drive value out of AI. Why do you think that is?
I guess they've invested in a program, they've invested in technology, and so quite rightly they should have a degree of confidence in their information. They've put that in place. So I guess they're probably feeling quite pleased with themselves, being a little bit ahead. I would be. So that is great. That's a great position to take. I think there would be opportunity on top of that for those organisations to then leverage AI to close and improve it further, because there will be holes in their data. And equally for organisations that haven't been as successful with master data management programs and, the various different things you do around data, I guess there is an opportunity for them to. But what I would say with those sort of programs of work, they're very long running, aren't they? We've spoken over the years, spoken to many organisations. Steve, how long did organisations spend doing data quality?
And I think most companies that have got data quality issues, they do that forever. I think it is literally like painting the Forth Bridge.
Yeah.
The data classification thing, I think we always have believed that classifying your data and your documents is massively important.
Yeah.
But in this new world of GenAI,
Yeah.
Especially where we're using open book models in the enterprise, where it's becoming really important to give those models a snippet, a relatively small bit of information. That is not an easy undertaking. One of the things we've got to do is we make sure it's the right information with the answer in it, but also that they're allowed to see, they have the right permissions to see that.
Yeah.
Data classification is a massive step in being able to do that, right?
Oh, 100%. Like if you can classify your information, if you've already classified some of your information, that means you understand what it is. And then add that to security, who can see things, right? You then set yourself up for a much safer way of deploying and exploiting GenAI. Couple that with a user's persona, so what a user wants to see, and you can start to join those worlds together. So it might be, in finance, you're a finance person, so we know that finance person's interested in finance documents, invoices, depending on the time, where we are in the month, it might be invoices or it might be payroll or purchase orders.
Cash remittances.
Exactly, right? So you can start to shrink the world down. So we know that person at that time in the month is looking for things because it's month end, you want to do the invoicing. So we can whittle stuff down, we can look at a lot less information, and we can be confident in the quality of that. We've classified it. We're secure because we can do all that permission trimming, and then we can pass models a smaller amount of information that's highly accurate, and then you can get the right answers. So
I know from work we've done over many years, some of the largest companies might have over 1,000 different classifications.
Easily.
Some smaller companies might have 200 or 300, and a whole range in between. But let's just go, a typical company might have 500 to 1,000 different classifications. We also know that about half of the information that exists in enterprise is what we might call rot. There's information in there that is effectively redundant, old versions, things that have been created as a one-off, like it could be a Christmas card list.
the canteen menu.
We know roughly half of that information is of valuable records. And then if we can go through and classify all of that into 500, 1,000 different pots, and then as you say, every person with their particular work journey that they're doing that day, we can shrink it down just to the classifications that they're interested in. That's why those companies that have invested in data classification are going to be so much better prepared to start driving value, right?
100%. You will be. You're going to have confidence, and it's going to make those conversations with those protectors of the realm so much easier, right? Because you've got your house in order. right? Before you're going along and asking IT security and legal, etc., to underwrite this. If you can get your story and you've done that homework and you've classified some of that information, you're in a much better position. But what I would say, right, is that shouldn't put people off that aren't as far along on that journey, right? Because maybe what you think about instead is think about some high value things to go after, and then worry about getting the data quality in shape for that smaller set of information and go on that journey. I'd probably say it would be a bad thing, given the speed everything's moving, a bad thing to then go, right, time out, we've got to do a data quality project, and we're not using GenAI till we've done data quality projects. That would probably be the wrong answer.
I think that's a really good point. And a few times when we talk about this, we look at how important GenAI is to drive business value, how we can turn it the other way to help us fix our data.
Yes. Yeah.
I know we've done lots of work around classifying data and documents, but can you just give me a minute on how we might use AI to cluster and label information to help us with that classification journey?
So first of all, what I would say is GenAI isn't the answer to everything. For some of those things, you're going to look at some of more traditional technologies, you might want to call them traditional technologies. So, if you've got a load of information out there, a good start, and it's not classified, a good place to start is to cluster it into some groups, right? Cluster it into some groups, and then start to look at those groups and go, right, they're finance documents, their invoices within there, etc. So you can cluster them into documents.
That's an unsupervised thing, right?
Just an unsupervised thing. You have not got people sitting doing that. You're just going to use a machine learning algorithm. And some of these have been around for a long time, and they're very reliable. And you get some good what you call clusters out. And if you use things like community detection, that can put those clusters together. So then you've got a community of finance, a community of HR, and that can help bootstrap creating classification models, because you've done that heavy lifting. You've not basically asked all these users to. I often think of it of giving a bunch of users, get a big box of paper and tip it out onto a desk and say, shuffle that into 50 classifications. No one's going to do that. But if you've pre-clustered it and you've put it into some piles that are roughly right, and you get them to just go through that, use the right user interface to be able to visually inspect it, then that is actually that is a thing you can do, right, in a sensible time frame. Build yourself then some classification models, and then use that to classify. I will just say, since you asked, GenAI, we often talk about using GenAI for the task of classification, and it can do classification, but it's an expensive way of doing it. Just it costs a lot more in terms of compute, and it doesn't give you consistent labels out as well, which isn't really that helpful in that compliance world. If it's an invoice, so you want it to be called an invoice, and so that is one consideration there. But it can help. It does form part of one of the helper technologies when thinking about that.
I think the key takeaway here is that those companies that have invested, that are ahead, and start generating, great. But the message to those who haven't is there's some very, very cool here and now technology that can be applied on your data estate, and you can really quickly accelerate classification projects.
100%.
And start doing this at scale across all of your data, and you can really join the party and get on driving value around.
100%.